An appointment today and see how glamorous you can look. Call 561-409-4065 to book your appointment. Ivy Lee's Luxe Makeup and Beauty Lounge is located at 233 South Federal Highway on the first floor of the Boca Grande building in Boca Raton. The number again is 561-409-4065.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
It's the Becky and Boca Show, coming to you live every Thursday night at 6 p.m. from glamorous downtown Boca Raton. I'll show you how to live life in style in one of the country's most elegant cities, nestled right along the beautiful Atlantic beaches between Palm Beach and Miami. So sit back, relax, and let me show you how to indulge yourself Boca style. Hello, welcome to the Becky and Boca Show. Tonight, I have a guest here in the studio who actually spends a lot of her time living aboard a cruise ship, actually living for weeks at a time.
Months at a time.
Months at a time. She is a jewelry concierge?
Well, I guess you could say that. A shopping concierge, shopping expert, shopping host. I mean, there's a lot of different titles, but essentially.
But anybody that has lived in Tampa, Florida might recognize Debbie from TV. You were on ABC, NBC, and CBS over the years.
Yes, that's right.
And as you had daytime shows?
I was first, actually, I got into TV as a TV meteorologist.
She's also a lawyer, by the way.
So I've had very many careers. I started out as a lawyer, then went back to school to pursue my passion, which is meteorology, and then I became a TV meteorologist.
I know you don't like to say weather girl, but you were the meteorologist in Tampa Bay.
That's correct. I was at the NBC station. Then I transitioned into talk show host at NBC, then went to the CBS station, and in between those two... actually, after I was a CBS talk show host, and I went back to weather at ABC.
Yes, but that was after the last talk show, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I was in and out of TV for the last, 18 years or so in Tampa.
So that begs the question, why are you working on a cruise ship? I mean, I know it's a great job, and you get to travel and all that, but here's my big question. You're kind of like a Boca girl. You like a nice lifestyle. I know you have a beautiful home on Tampa Bay, and you were willing to trade in that home for months at a time to live in a little cabin on a cruise ship.
Well, I know it sounds a little bit crazy. Yeah. I like to say that this is my midlife crisis job.
I guess.
I mean, it really came about in an odd way, and it's kind of really the way a lot of my jobs have come about, and I've just kind of said, you know what, I'll try it and see if I like it.
And there is theater and media involved because they film you and
Absolutely.
They show that on the screens and on the ship.
Yes.
And all of that.
And
so you're still on TV, you're just on TV on a cruise ship.
Right, and that's kind of how I found the job. Is I was actually on LinkedIn, and I typed in TV host, and this job popped up.
Okay.
And it wasn't really descriptive as to exactly what it was, but it just said travel, if you enjoy shopping, luxury items. I said, hey, that's me, I love it all. So I applied for it, saw what it was, and I was actually offered the job because really the most important part of this job is to be a presenter, because essentially what I do is I promote stores, mainly shopping in port, luxury items like jewelry, watches, things like that. Mm-hmm. So presentation is really the most important part of the job. And since I had TV experience, they offered me the job.
And is it also when the people are in their cabins, you're running on the screen the whole time talking about the various...
That's correct. I do a big live show, and then that show's recorded, and it runs over and over and over in people's rooms. And then also little videos as well. So I do a variety of things that run in people's rooms and a variety of live shows.
Okay.
So when they offered me the job, they said, here's the problem. It's a 6-month commitment. And I said, what do you mean?
You go away on a boat for 6 months?
Like I go and I can come back, right? And she's like, no, you go and you're gone for 6 months. And I said, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I do have a family. I mean, my kids are older, but I do have a family and a house. And I said, I can't be gone for 6 months. So I was just like, I was going to say, okay, sorry, thanks, but no thanks. And then she's like, well, wait a minute. What would you be willing to do? And I said, well, I don't know, maybe 2 months. So she's like,
I said, let's try a week.
So anyway, to make a very long story short, it all happened, and I'm kind of a short termer. I do kind of fill-ins because most people who do my job, they're on the ship for 6 months. In fact, most crew members in whatever job you're doing have a contract that lasts 6 to even some of them 9 months.
That's tough.
And you are on that ship for 6 to 9 months, no days off.
Oh.
And then you have vacation, which is typically six to 8 weeks vacation, and then you do another contract, 6 to 9 months. So my contracts are typically 2 months, although I have been on the ship as long as 4 months at a time, just because of the circumstances, I kept getting extended. But typically I have a 2-month contract, and then I'm off for a couple months and 2 months.
And you got to go back on.
So-
Okay, I know what everyone wants to know. What is your room like on the ship, and where is it in the ship?
People always ask that
That's
question.
what I'd want to know.
You know, it depends on the job you have. You know, it's funny. There really is quite a hierarchy for crew members on the ship.
Are you considered an officer?
Depends on the cruise line. I've worked on 2 different cruise lines, Princess and Carnival. On Princess, I am considered an officer. I have officer status. On Carnival, I don't, but I have pretty much the same privileges. The difference is on some cruise lines, I get a window. Other cruise lines, I don't get a window. A window to me is...
No window?
Oh, let me tell you what. A window is so nice. And when I say a window, it's...
Wait, can I remind you that you live in an enormous house on Tampa Bay with a lot of windows looking out onto water. You don't have to go and get in that boat and go
Yeah, but
underneath
this
and
is-
have a
but-
little cabin
But
with
this is
no window.
actually you're not only looking at the water, you're on the water. I mean, that's why I love it, because I love the ocean. I love it. But I will say that a window or 2 portholes, which is essentially what I had, really is very
portholes.
nice. It's
Officer
critical.
status.
Critical. But I have had a room without a window, and it's a little bit rough. But, you know, it is what it is. You can always walk outside, and you're right on the ocean, which is beautiful. But again, depending on your status, there's crew, staff, officers.
Okay.
And the higher you are, the better the room you have. Luckily, I don't have to share a room, but
That's really nice, too.
most crew members do.
It's better than...
So as far as what the room looks like,
You showed me one. I went and visited you in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if you remember which ship that was.
that was when I was on Princess.
That was a nice one.
That was one of my very nicest rooms, I have to say.
Yeah.
I've been in very small rooms, which are like a small dorm room. I've been in rooms that have bunk beds, although we're really supposed to have a double bed, but we don't necessarily. Most crew members will have a bunk bed, and they share rooms.
They share a room.
And the
Wow.
bed and the bathrums are tiny, so it is a very
even in
small
that nice room. You showed me the bathroom, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I could do this.
tiny, yeah, tiny. So yeah, the rooms are and they're low. They are typically just above sea level or sometimes below sea level. But the good news about that is that's the most stable part of the ship.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
you don't have all the
not know
rocking.
that.
And
Okay.
especially if you're toward the middle of the ship as opposed to the front or the back, that's where it's the most stable. So actually the lower part of the ship, I don't mind being lower. And in fact, if I went on a cruise myself, most people like to get on the really high.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I don't think I would want one of the higher
Oh, so that
decks
prevents
because
seasickness from being lower.
yeah, you have a
Didn't know
lot
that.
of movement. You have a lot of movement. But thankfully, you know, when I took the job, I said, you know, I can do anything for 2 months. I don't know if I'll like it. I hadn't been on a cruise in 20 years. And I didn't know if I was going to get seasick. But I said, I can do whatever. I can do anything for 2 months. And as it turned out, I don't get seasick at all. It doesn't bother me. So that's the good
So
news.
tell us exactly what you do. When you wake up in the morning in your little cubby hole, then what happens?
Well, it depends on the day. For me, if it's a day where, you know, the very beginning of the cruise, when people start getting on the ship, that's when I start promoting. I mean, my job is to promote.
Your job
and-
is to get the big spenders to go to these stores on the islands?
Yes, for
right?
the most part, and to go to the stores on the ship. And there is a trade-off. It's not just, I'm not just sending them to people on in the port, certain stores because, you know, they're my stores. I'm sending them there because those are stores that we call recommended or guaranteed stores. They know that if they buy
Know what you're
a
buying.
diamond, a Rolex, whatever they're buying, that it's guaranteed to be authentic. It's guaranteed to be of the value that they've told that, because
That's
a lot of
important.
people, some people don't realize this, shopping in the Caribbean especially is enormous. I mean, more people shop in the Caribbean in one day than anywhere else in the world.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it is
living
very
in
big.
South Florida, a lot of people take cruises, and it always
Yep.
surprises me. People go on these cruises to go find a Rolex.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it
Why
really
that a
is. It really is one of the best places to buy watches and jewelry, diamonds especially. And the reason why, a couple of reasons. First, it's tax free.
Okay.
And that
Well,
can
that's
save you a
important.
lot of money.
Sure.
And secondly, they can give you, a lot of times you can get brand discounts. And a lot of the stores are, they're vertically integrated, so they don't have, a lot of the middlemen, so they can give you better deals.
Get a better price. So
Yeah.
you get a better price.
I mean, I could give you my hour and a half speech, but I won't do
No,
that.
just those two things right there. You don't pay the
Yeah.
sales tax, and the price is better.
Exactly. So you might get a little bit of a discount on a watch. Plus, you don't pay for the taxes, so it is really one of the best places to buy, fine jewelry
But do you
and watches.
find also, I imagine there's that whole souvenir thing. People are on a trip and they want to buy a souvenir. Is that what a lot of the shoppers are doing? Or is it just people
They are buying
there for the
they are
jewelry?
buying souvenirs because they want to buy things for people when they get home. But the funny thing is, you'll find that the people will spend a lot of money on themselves, and then they'll buy the souvenirs for their friends back home. But I mean, that's just that's human nature. That's the way it goes. But people will come on the ship not having any intention at all of buying jewelry or watches, and then they'll come to my show and they're like, "Oh, well, this is
They
a great
realize
opportunity.
what-
This
yeah.
is what I should do." But what we do is we send them to the stores where we know that they're going to get what they pay for. Because I have had people that have gone to, Joe Baloney's diamond store and come back with jewelry that was not real. They spent thousands of dollars and go back home. Yeah,
especially being out of the country. Well, happens
Right.
in the United States
yeah,
too. But
right. But here you go home and you have no recourse. So this
if
way,
it's a store that you've recommended,
then
that can't happen.
it's completely guaranteed. And if for some reason they went home and they find out that it's not real, there's a number right there on the information that I give them. They call and they make sure that they get refunded, replaced, and they're completely
That's good.
guaranteed.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's our job. That's our trade-off. Is yes, we send them to certain stores, but then they know what they're getting in those stores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of the fabulous diamonds that they've got on these islands.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I will say, it's funny. There are several jewelry stores we work with. One jewelry store in particular that has some amazing, like you see red carpet pieces. There was one of my guests who bought a $120,000 diamond bracelet. That was
gosh.
just amazing.
Wow.
There was one guest one time that bought a 9-carat yellow diamond ring, and yellow diamonds, as you know,
yes, I know. I interviewed a diamond broker.
are very, very
Yes.
rare, and so that was quite a diamond. So it's really fun. It's fun for me because I get to see all this jewelry that maybe I can't afford, but I vicariously enjoy when the passengers can do it. And it's also fun to see passengers over and over. In fact, when people ask me what I love the most about working on a cruise ship, I always say the people. And it's not just the passengers. I do love the passengers that I meet. And sometimes you'll see them over and over because people, and I want to circle back to this to talk about how some people almost live on cruise ships.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's really crazy because I never realized this, especially the older passengers, like
Because
on
it's easier
Princess,
than
Holland
trying to-
America. You have a lot of retirees. And some people will go from ship to ship to ship. They're like, oh, I have this ship, or they'll stay on the same ship. Like I had someone stay on my ship for 3 cruises in a row.
I did not know people did that.
Yep. Or they'll go from
Wow.
ship to ship. They're like, we're getting off this ship, getting on this ship. I talked to one man on my last contract, and this was in January, and he told me he was going to be on a ship all the way until September. Different ships.
Moving around from ship to ship.
Yeah, and actually I've been told, cheaper to live on a ship than it is to live at home because you have all your
Meals?
you have someone that cleans your room.
So these are like basically homeless people that are just...
I guess they are, or maybe they're renting a room out
There's
at
a
home.
ship called the World. I don't know if it's still around, but I remember that from maybe 20 years ago. People were buying rooms actually on this magnificent ship that would sail the world, and you could go
I've heard
and
of that.
spend a few months, send your friends.
I don't know if
get
it
on off.
still exists, but even if it doesn't, people still treat ships like that. And people are very loyal to different cruise lines because if you go on cruises over and over and over on the same cruise line, it's like a loyalty program. So you start getting points. So you start getting free Wi-Fi, free drink packages, free laundry. So you get all of these, and then you become a platinum
way to
member.
live then.
Yes, so there are people.
So they spend most of the year on ships.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy, but yeah, they do it. I don't know if I would like to do that. Well, but
You're kind of doing it.
I guess so. Now, what I was going to say when I talked about the people that I love, it's not just the passengers, but I love meeting other people in the crew. And
you were telling me there's a lot of like married couples that work on these ships.
There are married couples.
They both work on the ship.
There are, and most of them actually meet on the ship.
Are they allowed to share a room, or do they have to have?
They are. It depends on the circumstances, but typically, and again, it happens usually. They'll meet someone on the ship, and then because people are coming and going, and you're always on different ships, different contracts. So if you meet someone on a ship and you want to stay in a relationship with them, it's virtually impossible if you're on different ships all the time.
They might get sent somewhere else. Okay.
So what you can do is you can request to have your contracts linked. I'm not positive, and it depends on the cruise line, but I think you have to be married in order to have your account linked.
Yeah.
And then they will try to assign you contracts together. And then if you do that, you can share a room together. You can have, a room together. So
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. So married couples do work together on ships. And then a lot of people are married and have families at home.
Elsewhere,
yeah. Come on the ship. There's not that, you don't see that much of that, although you do in certain cultures. And that's another thing. There are very, very, very few Americans that work on cruise ships. Very few. So, for example, the last ship I was on was not a terribly big ship, but it was probably had 2,500 passengers and about 1,500 crew members.
Wow, there's that many. That's the ratio?
It's almost 2 to 1, yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because there's so many different jobs that have to be done. And out of those 1,500 crew members, probably 5 Americans.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're cruising mostly in the Caribbean, correct?
I am. The Caribbean, I've done the
Didn't you do
Caribbean,
Alaska?
Mexican Riviera, Alaska, and Hawaii, and the Panama Canal.
Wow.
So those are but I've stayed kind of in this.
What countries are most of the people that work on cruise ships from?
I would say the largest population is, and it probably depends on the cruise line too.
And where it is,
but
yeah.
the largest population typically is Filipino. They do a lot of recruiting from the Philippines.
Okay.
They also do a lot of recruiting from some of the Eastern European, like Croatia, Serbia, Ukraine, South Africa. A lot of South Africans, and then you'll see a lot of officers from Italy and the UK. And then some people from South America, some Canadians, but almost no Americans. In fact, most cruise lines do not recruit Americans at all.
Why is that?
Well, I could only guess.
Okay, this is Deborah's opinion.
But my guess is that most Americans wouldn't put up with the pay that you get and the conditions that you get. Not that
And
it's bad
traveling like that.
conditions, but it's most crew members, and it depends on your job. Most crew members, not a great amount of pay. However, you have to look at it this way: you're not paying anything for room and
your
board.
living expenses are all paid.
So everything that you have, you can save, and that's why. And a lot of Filipinos do this.
So they can send money
They
home.
send their entire paycheck home.
Because you have
and
no expenses.
No expenses. I mean,
didn't think about that, but yeah.
You're all your food. And
How many jobs are there out there that would give you a place to live and pay all your
Exactly.
expenses.
And then especially if you're young and single, really it's a great job for someone
I
who's,
would think it
who's
would
in their
be
20s.
young. Yeah.
Because if you're young, single with no strings at home, you don't have to have an apartment, you don't have to have a car.
You could just save all the every minute.
And a lot
Right.
of people do this. They go on vacation, they work for their 6 months, they go on vacation for 2 months, and they go home and live with mom and dad for 2 months. Mom and dad are,
So they
making
don't
their
have
meals.
to maintain a car payment, a house payment,
Exactly,
insurance,
right.
groceries.
Now, some people do. I mean, it surprises me that some people do have a house or an apartment and a car, but it's not used that much,
Right. How could you have an apartment if
But-
you're young and paying for that and being out on the cruise?
I don't know. It depends, and everybody's different. But there are people from so many different cultures, and like I said, very, very few Americans. So I love
Meeting people.
working with all these people that are just and you get to see the different cultures and how they. The funny thing is, I'm kind of a joker, and I realized that my American humor
Doesn't
doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of other cultures. So I've kind of had to stop making, these silly little puns and jokes because nobody gets it.
That's too bad.
But it is really enjoyable to meet people from all over the world, and they all speak English. In fact, that's a prerequisite
They
to
have
getting
to
the
speak
job.
English
They
to
have
be
to
on
speak
these boats.
English.
Okay.
Now, some of them don't speak great English, but they have to speak English to get the job
okay.
because they have to be. Most of them have to be able to communicate. With passengers, and in fact, a lot of them even have rules. Like, for example, there are a lot of Italian officers, a lot of Italian and British, especially on the cruise lines I've been. But they have to speak, even if there's only Italians, they have to speak English. That's the requirement when they're working.
Oh, they can't speak.
I'm sure they do, but
Yeah, if
but
they're
they're
in front of
supposed to.
people. Yeah.
They're supposed to speak English, and they're never when you're in front of passengers, you are always supposed to speak English.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because people get a little paranoid when two people are standing next to them talking in another language. I don't know if you remember the Seinfeld episode
No, I don't.
with the Korean
the nail
manicurist. Yes,
I do remember that. I do remember that.
so people get paranoid. They don't ever want people to speak in their own language.
Okay, can I ask you, what about, what kind of a life is it for people? Do they get, when they're off work, can they socialize on the ship, or do they have to be hidden away from
Well, it's funny.
the passengers, or what? I mean, when you're off work, then what?
Well,
Just go back to your room, or?
and again, this depends on what status you have and whether you have, for example, in my job, I have full guest privileges, which means
You
I
can
am,
go into the public areas, right?
I'm
Okay.
allowed to have a cocktail in the guest areas, but a lot of crew members are not. But really, even though I do have guest privileges, when I'm done working, I frankly don't necessarily want to socialize with the passengers. I prefer to socialize with the crew. So there is a whole culture.
I was going to ask about that, a whole
underground,
behind the scenes.
essentially. It's kind of like, I always call it like the underground tunnels of Disney World.
I remember years ago, I worked for the hospital. I did public relations for businesses in Boca Raton, and the Boca Raton Resort and Club.
Yeah.
Great, big, historic building.
Right.
Well, there's a back door where only the employees go in, and there are catacombs behind the walls because there's thousands and thousands of employees. They can't be in the guest hallways. There's a whole world under
Right.
there with a whole cafeteria,
Yeah.
and you don't see them when you go in the. So I imagine there's the
It's-
same thing on a
Like
cruise
that
ship.
on the ship too. Typically, floor 4 and below. That's where the crew.
So there
live.
must be tunnels or hallways that are only for the crew that the guests don't
Oh,
go in.
absolutely.
It's for them to move around the
Oh,
boat
yeah,
without.
absolutely.
Because, like
Anything
you said, there's
from-
so many.
Right. Anything from the main crew deck down, passengers are not allowed there. And they have what's called, depending on what cruise line you're on, either it's called the M1 or the I-95, which essentially is a hallway that goes from the front of the ship to the back of the ship.
Oh, my
and it's
goodness.
the fastest way to get from
get around.
one side to the other, and that's only for crew members. And then you also have, the different messes. You have the crew mess, the staff mess, the officers mess, and that's where most people eat. Some people who have guest privileges can eat, I could eat in some of the guest areas, but we're not allowed to be there when it's crowded. You're never allowed to
Taking
be
up a
in
space that-
line in front of a guest. So
Oh, I see. Okay.
it's really easier just to eat down in crew
Yeah.
quarters.
Is the
where-
food good?
It depends.
Well, you're a picky eater, so you're not.
It can be. I mean, when I was on the ship where I had officer status and I ate in the officer's mess, it actually was the same menu as the passengers menu.
Oh, that's nice.
With the
Okay.
exception of we're not allowed to have lobster or steak. So that was good.
Yeah.
In my last contract, I ate in the staff mess, which was okay. Sometimes you get tired of it, but then I was allowed to go there also, depending on the ship you're on. They have specialty restaurants on the ship that you
Right.
can pay extra for.
Oh.
So, for example, they had a sushi restaurant, and it's, much less expensive than a restaurant at home because you've already paid, as a passenger, you've
Right.
already paid for your food.
You used to do an upcharge to go to.
It's like an
yeah.
upcharge
I've been
or
on
a
couple
cover
of cruises, I
charge, they
remember
call
that.
it.
Yeah.
So they have a beautiful steakhouse where you can get a amazing 6-course meal, and it's like $30. But it's really $30 extra from what you've already paid. Or like what I would do is I went to this little sushi place, which was great. I got a sushi roll. It was $7. And I'd get my little sushi roll to go, and I could bring it back to my room and eat it in my room, or I could eat it there if I wanted to. So I did that a lot. I probably
Okay.
spent more money than I should by going to the little specialty restaurants every once in a
Right.
while. Yeah.
That's fun. I'm just trying to picture what it's like, though, when you know you're going out there and you're not going to be back for a couple months.
Well, I tell you what, it's not easy to pack, that's for sure. Because
What do you have to wear?
well, in my job, almost everybody on the ship has a uniform. In my job, I wear regular clothes, but I always have to dress nice. I wear a dress, heels.
Like if you're going to work.
Right.
Okay.
But really, it's a very similar
you wore on the
uniform
TV show.
to what I wore, when I worked
Maybe
on
like
TV.
what we have on right now.
Exactly. In fact, this is the type of dress I would wear.
Okay.
Now, when we go in port, I wear like a little white polo shirt and blue shorts. So I
Okay.
wear
And
more of
when
a
you
little port
are in
uniform.
port, do you ever have time off that you can just enjoy yourself on the islands?
Very rarely. Is if there are stores in port, the stores that we recommend, then typically I'm spending my entire time at the stores, either with people, because I help them shop, I help them negotiate their deals, because everything's negotiable. That's another thing I teach them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
See, it's
another
very
thing-
valuable to go to your
It's another thing I
presentation.
teach in my seminars too, is how to negotiate and how to get the best deal. And I'll also do a seminar on diamonds and gemstones and how to select gemstones and how to know what
know
type
what
of
you're
diamond
getting.
you're getting, the 4 C's of diamonds and all of that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's educational too. So
All right, we only got about a minute left here.
Oh my gosh, that went
Deborah
quick.
shows goes fast, doesn't
Wow.
it? All right, well, good luck on your new career. Do you see yourself doing this for a long time?
I don't know. I've been doing it about 1.5 years, and I really, really enjoy it. So I could definitely see myself doing it for a little longer, for sure.
All right, well, that was very interesting. Okay, thank you, Deborah Shrills.
Sure. Thanks, Becky.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been watching and listening to The Becky and Boca Show. Tune in every Thursday night at 6 p.m. to discover all the ways to spoil yourself and have a good time in beautiful Boca Raton. See you next week.